I'm really, really, really excited to be here. If you don't know, my name is Jordan, Jordan Belonwu. I'm a graphic designer, creative director, art director. Um, Something that's really important for me is that this is actually my first presentation ever that I'm not presenting to clients. So I'm really happy that I'm having to actually do this. So I'll run through it really quickly. My name is Jordan Belonwu. I obviously am a graphic designer and art director. This is just to show what my upbringing was like because my parents apparently were very cool people, and it sort of reflected in the way I was brought up because there was a lot of interesting relationships with fashion and interior design. My dad was really particular about flowers and interior design, and my mom was friends with Samu Wright, who was a really cool artist. So it sort of like helped my growing up. This just shows some other pictures of what it looked like in like a typical home, and this just shows my parents and what exactly they look like. So my parents were really 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 interested in fashion, and they used to always like dress us up to look like very cool kids. So I think it sort of affected the way I understand taste and understand the value of art and aesthetics. Growing up, I used to draw, and I made drawings like this, and weirdly, I assumed that I was good at drawing, and I ended up in science class. And in SS1, I failed every single subject that makes you a science student. So I failed chemistry, physics, biology, everything that you would say this is a science student, I failed them. So SS2, I decided that man, I can't keep doing this, and I switched to art class. So I essentially became in art class, and my goal, when I was in science class, my goal was to be an aeronautic engineer. I don't know why that was interesting for me, but right now thinking about it, I think it's very foolish because I do not know maths. So I told my mom, and partly why my upbringing was really interesting. I told my mom that, like, I didn't even tell her before changing. I just came to the house like, I think I'm going to be an artist. She was like, okay. So there was not that kind of pressure that made it feel like, so you're going to amount to nothing. And I think partly because my mom was friends with some other artists, so she sort of had some context for what art felt like and how this was not that much of a derogatory situation. So I applied to University of Benin, and I became a student of fine arts, and I did a lot of sculpture. This was the very first picture. There was my, I think, second sculpture assignment, and our lecturers just threw us straight into like first class sculpt something. Like I was thinking that they were going to give us like what is the theory of sculpture, how do you like he didn't even explain anything, and we just had to like keep on trying our best to understand what design and what like every single facet of art was like. Then it was during this period that I dabbled in graphic design, and because of some assignments, I had a computer, and this was the very first logo I ever did. Weirdly, this logo, I did not even know how to use the software, but I charged someone that I could do a logo. So after they gave me the project, I think it was 5K. Then I took the I had the idea, so I drew it on paper. Then I went to the guy that was very good at my class, like, oh, this is the logo. I can get to this point, but that's about all I can do. Then he helped me work on it. So I started working on multiple logos, and interestingly, I was among the best designers in my school at that period. And it was really interesting because I think it was around this period I discovered mock-ups. And one of my friends was telling me I should keep it on the low. I should not let people know that mock-ups exist. So this particular poster, this Reading Meets Runway, I remember very clearly that the day it launched and how my campus had theater arts. So every time theater art have like a production, they meet graphic designers to do the posters. So the day it launched, like I remember very clearly, a large number of people were looking at the poster and were like, wow, this is really great. And I was really, really inspired, and I felt like this graphic design thing, I think I can do it for life. So I started doing a couple of other more graphic design works. I did my mom's logo for her cake company, and essentially I did quite a number of graphic design. And within that period, I sort of scaled through, and I kept on. And one thing that was sort of interesting for me was that I kept on, like, I focused a lot on graphic design and especially branding. And I did a lot of logos. And I don't know if that was good or bad, but I realized that it sort of like helped me have like a narrow-minded, not in a bad way, but a very interesting approach to brand design, because I kept on going deeper and trying to understand how best can you get at this project. I remember seeing one project one time, I think it was on Behance, and I was showing my friend, like, what will it really take to work on a project like this? I think this time we were charging like 10K, 15K. And the guy was like, if someone pays you 150K, you do all this work. And I was like, that's true. So in my head, it felt like this amount of work is possible if someone can pay you 150K. I was like, okay, great. So all I need to do is really focus hard on doing this. So fast forward to a few years later, I'd worked at multiple different agencies and companies. So the work was looking like this. And I could tell that there was a level of growth, and it was apparent from my previous work and current work that the work was getting better. So it felt like that means I can continue pushing this, like within this same framework of brand design, I can continue exploring and trying as much as possible to get better at the work that I do. Later on, say 4 or 5 years after some of all these projects, I launched a design studio, and I currently work with some of the most amazing people that I've ever met in my life. And they're really fascinated again with design and all its meticulous details. So we work on a lot of types of projects, ranging from packaging design to brand design to set design, production design, and we do a lot of typical branding and also untypical branding. So this just shows a few of the situations we've been in working, and this video just gives like a brief overview of some of the work that we've done. Some of the work shows a little bit of production design, art direction, and also shows graphic design and shows illustration, and just shows like the entire breadth of the potential work that actually exists within the studio. So I'll be going straight into thank you, our most recent work. So I can't remember the exact date right now, but at some point we got an email, and it was an email intro from Bode Casava. What they wanted to do was they wanted to rebrand Casava. Casava is an insurance company that its entire identity was hinged upon the concept of creating insurance you enjoy. So at this point, Casava had just raised $4 million, and they wanted to do like a big announcement because they've been working on the product for a long while, and they reached out for us to work on both the brand identity for Casava and also this launch video. So it was at this period we reached out to Dada Temitope, and he worked on he directed the video, and this just shows how the relationship continued. So essentially, this is the video, and it was essentially trying to show by how much we could really, really visualize what enjoyable insurance looked like. Okay, I'll start the video again because I think it has audio.
Casava exists really for one reason: make insurance an enjoyable experience to help people thrive and prosper. We've been inspired by your stories to make products that protect you, your family, and the things that you love, because it's insurance you enjoy.
So at this point, Casava's identity was what you just saw at last screen, and we worked on the production design for the commercial. And at this point, we started understanding exactly what the major framework for what Casava was trying to do, which was create a situation or a platform whereby people really enjoy insurance. And something that was really important with insurance in Nigeria is that many people agree and tell themselves that insurance does not work in Nigeria. So a lot of people say that instead of insurance, they say I'm covered by the blood of Jesus. So people know that there's insurance and they do not dispute it, but it's never a thing that they really trust that it comes through. So Cassava really wanted to change this narrative and they wanted to introduce people to insurance that they really enjoy. So that sort of like formed the framework for the entire identity for every single touch point. We were thinking about how we could really emphasize the concept of insurance you enjoy to the point where people really understood it and believed it and it didn't feel like it was untrue. At this point, this was what Cassava's identity was looking like. So I'll just give you a brief overview of some of the work that we did and what the identity was all about. Cassava existed as an app and also had a website where people could buy insurance easily. And because of this, they wanted to communicate the speed at which access to insurance could exist. So they were doing a lot of communication, but some of the problems we realized with the current identity and current marketing framework was that Cassava actually communicated like just another tech startup. And especially in Nigeria, whereby a lot of people are slowly, like, startup culture has become a big deal to the point where people are now skeptical about believing in startups because it feels like you're just another group of people that have just raised money and you're about to lie to us and tell us that you have the product that we can do this and do this. And eventually we download the app, it doesn't happen. But you have a cool website, you have cool things, but the fundamental product feels like it doesn't work. So also at that point, we realized that there were a lot of elements that made a company feel like a startup. And something that was really important was, or like a tech startup, was logos. And the typical logos for startups felt like they were sans serif typefaces and they were within the confines of let it be simple, let it be legible. But we realized I wanted to position Cassava as a lifestyle brand that does insurance. So we're trying to look at brands that existed that really had a lot of a lot of personality in them and they sort of communicated something that felt enjoyable. A lot of food brands came to mind, like you can see Kellogg's and Chobani, also Burger King. It felt like something that it's supposed to be an integral part of your life. So it's not supposed to feel like something you go out for. It's like how we understand brands like Coca-Cola are sort of like embedded in our day-to-day lifestyle. So that sort of like informed the idea of how we wanted to communicate Cassava. So we started working on the logo and we're doing multiple tests. And majority of the work that we were doing at this point was trying to see how much we could emphasize the ease of access to insurance with just the logo. We worked on multiple versions trying to draw and craft the most impeccable visual that represents something that flows very easily and something that does not feel like it is being forced. So after working on this for a while, we arrived at the final cassava typeface and we added motion to it and the entire idea for the logo and animation was that we wanted to communicate some ease of access that exists with insurance and we felt like by animating the letters to make them really feel like they were flowing it will give some people a level of unexpected interestingness that comes with access that is easy to for lack of better words easy to access. So after working on the logo, we started deciding on what typefaces to choose. We landed on Gooper, which was a really interesting typeface because a lot of the ends felt like it had a lot of character. And this again was contrasting to typical expected visual identities that existed within the um, tech ecosystem because it felt more like this is not a tech brand because we're using a serif typeface and it was even a more elegant and slightly playful typeface. So working on the typeface, we went on with it, and this just shows some of the ways the typeface was applied with the identity. Then we also started working on more details and just trying to see that this actually worked and it was communicated as the best possible way to really emphasize the identity we're looking forward to. So we also then moved over to and started working on color. So something I should mention was that Cassava, when at the point where they were introducing us to the projects, they were like, "You can touch everything, but you can't touch the color." And they were like, this felt like the single most interesting visual that represented cassava. And this was because not a lot of brands use this kind of divergent pink. So they were like, we need to keep this pink, and whatever else you need to change with the entire identity, you could. So we worked on we used the pink, and for some weird reason, nobody in the studio can remember why it's called Bloom. It just happened, and we started calling it Bloom, and there's actually no reason why. But the secondary colors, which is inside and outside, were sort of influenced by how we imagine cassava covers like an entire spectrum of your life. So we assume that life is divided into two bits. Alright. So we assumed that cassava or insurance or your life in general was divided into two bits, and these two bits actually was inside and outside, which is everything that you have, like your job or your personal life was sort of your personal life furniture, things that were really inside your home were considered to be inside, and everything that was actually outside, like your job or housing or your car, was considered to be outside. Those that sort of formed the decision for the colors. Then we further extended it with secondary colors, and it sort of like started coming together. So the initial icon for the cassava was looking really interesting because at this point we had sort of crafted what was really important for the brand's visual. Then we started moving on to layout system. And what we wanted to exemplify with layout was we wanted to have visual devices that sort of felt like they were pathways to a better life or an insured life. So we used the dome to sort of represent some doorway and a pathway to actually having insured life. So it's almost like animates it forms like a portal, and it's in animation it actually comes to life and shows the importance of how there's some sort of passing through that exists, and it's housed a lot of visual elements in it. So we also tried working on this same visual device but testing to see what motion felt like and exploring all the possibilities that came with actually visualizing concepts that readily explained that cassava was really insurance you enjoy. So at this point, we had gotten a clear view of what social media would look like, merging all the elements. We then decided to still push it further again, and at this point, we worked on the illustrations. So illustrations were not exactly a a big or a large part of Cassava's identity. And this was because we wanted to not communicate Cassava as the brand that really felt like it was using illustrations as opposed to using real photographs that communicated reality of people. So a lot of these illustrations were drawn with the idea of giving a characterful personality to the identity for Cassava. So we also started testing out all the elements and putting them together and just seeing what the Cassava identity actually could look like, from mock-ups to stickers to social media. Then at this point, social media was looking interesting, and we had based our work, or a major part of the identity that we wanted to do or wanted to execute for Cassava was based on a lot of photography. And we realized that people easily it's easy for you to get people's attention when you use photographs than when you use illustrations. So because of this, we took a very big challenge. which was actually trying to shoot our own photographs. This was a really difficult scenario because as much as we could easily do back and forth with illustrations, they did not really exist with photographs. So it was a once you do it once, that's the end. So because of this, we realized that this is a problem that we cannot afford to shoot, for lack of a better word, shoot and miss. So what we decided to do was actually have a test shoot. So we worked on this shoot, and at this point, what we were trying to do, and work with Deji Olokun, and he was an amazing photographer. What we were trying to do at this point was actually see all the individual elements that could come into play and what the potentials for failure could look like. And after sampling all these things, and we decided that okay, we actually know what we want to do, then we went full on, and this was what the photographs look like. So majority of the photographs we shot or produced for Cassava was, we had a framework for trying to be a little bit ambiguous. And this was because the photographs would sort of represent one item, but they can also be reinterpreted to mean so many other things. So they could be used over and over again. Then during this process, we also worked on a little bit of stop motion for a course that we shot. And this stop motion was just to sort of like still re-emphasize the identity for Cassava and sort of give a more interesting visual. So all the things that you're seeing on screen easily could have been an illustration, but we chose to sort of go the difficult route by actually producing all these photographs and doing the stop motion within budget, just so that we actually could execute properly. So after putting everything together, the identity was taking shape, and we worked on a couple of things. This was signage that was done. Then we also worked on merchandise, and we painstakingly went all out with deciding exactly how we wanted to execute the elements. We reached out to multiple vendors, tested for materials, and it was in this process we actually realized that a lot of things actually are not possible in Nigeria. Like simply put, we had to start considering what the potential was for reaching out to external vendors. So it's even part of the reasons why I'm excited about things like this, because it sort of helps us understand what the limitations are. They now help us to actually break the boundaries. So after working on the project like this sort of now represents what Cassava looks like after all of the work has been done. And obviously, this project would have not been possible without the amazing collaborators that we had. And special shout out to Bode and the Cassava team, because they were really great. And that's it. Thank you very much.